We all have a place in community building, and if you've stumbled across this video, I invite you to stay with me for even just a few minutes to give my video a chance and see if we resonate on some level. This video in particular is all about how I entered the world of community building and how I turned my personal passions into community action. Because, like I said, we all have a role to play in community building. And this means that whatever our passions are, maybe that's sports, maybe that's arts, maybe it's music or mutual aid or other elements of community building, other hobbies, other things that help us feel alive. Whatever our passions are, they have a place in community building. And you have the capacity, you might not know it yet, but you do, you have the capacity to make that impact in your community in a way that is transformational and authentic and grounding and helps propel us all into this collective, vibrant future together. And so in this video, I am sharing how I did that for myself, and hopefully you'll be able to take away some steps or reflections to help you on this path too. Because like I said, you have a role here. You have a path to walk yourself. And if I can help you find even the start of that path, I know I will be doing my job right. So just to start, my name is Danielle. Vibrant Systems is my business, but more than that, it's my passion. And I'm not just saying that as a fun thing to say. Truly, very, very truly and deeply, the work I am doing with my business, Vibrant Systems, the work I'm doing to help support communities in their transformations, and the work I'm doing to help individuals embody the fullness of who they are is my purpose. It is my calling. And every single day I get to wake up and do this work, whether it's connecting with people through my video course, Elements of Self, or it's hosting a facilitated workshop, or even just sitting here and recording a YouTube video like this. Every single day I get to do that work brings me so much joy and aliveness into my life, and being able to connect with this work in the way that I have has really transformed how I show up in the world in so many ways, because it's required that I build a lot of capacity, a lot of discernment, a lot of regulation, but also a lot of excitement, a lot of playfulness, and a lot of curiosity for, okay, what's next? I've done this, what's next? Or, yeah, I did that thing, it didn't work out the way I wanted it to, but what can I learn from that? What can I still take away from it so I can move forward and really connect with that purpose, that future, that soul calling that I feel. I feel like I have always been drawn to community work in one way or another. I've always been someone who's had a lot of passions. I always wanted to make a difference. I always wanted to help people. I always cared about getting involved. And ironically, I look back at, where I was raised as a kid and how I was raised as a kid. Not intentional by any means, but it was very isolating. I grew up very rurally, and my parents were newcomers to that rural community, so we didn't have the social network or community to teach me a lot of the things that I'm doing now. I also, I made friends in elementary school, but it felt like every single year the friends that I made would happen to move away, or they'd end up in a different class the next year. And so I'd have to go through the process of making another new friend, and then they would move away. And I say this to bring up the fact that my early life, probably until I eventually went away to university, I was very isolated. I was disconnected. I was not in community with anyone. And if I can do the work that I've done to join community, to make an impact, and to commit to this vision, even though I was not given the tools growing up to do this, then you can too. Because that's where my story starts, is it starts that little girl who was so passionate about community, so passionate about making a difference. And I had to grow through this discomfort of isolation, this discomfort of feeling disconnected in order to be able to step into the role I am now. And now I am a community mentor. I go into communities, or I speak with, community builders who are just starting to gather people around a shared vision, and I help them achieve the goals that they want to achieve. I help them expand their capacity to navigate uncertainty and change. I help them do strategic plans. I help them understand that emotions are not something we just, shove away when we're in community, but they actually have to be something that we engage with and process together if we want our communities to be strong and resilient. The reason why, this will be juicy, why was I actually drawn towards community in the first place? What called me down this path? Honestly, it's a question I don't know if I've ever even asked myself, because maybe because it always felt so normal. It felt like it was what I was meant to do. I was meant to connect with people. But what really started drawing me down this path as I grew older, as I learned the impact, that's my dog or my sister-in-law's dog in the background. You can ignore it for the jingling. So first off, where was my passion for community building located? And I think how I actually uncovered this passion, apart from always feeling like there was a difference I wanted to make in the world, which I think many little kids have that idealism in them. But what helped me on this pathway was, as I went to university, I did my undergrad in anthropology because I wanted to be a writer, and I am a writer, I shouldn't say wanted to be, I am doing it, but I wanted to learn as much as I could so I could write well. And while I was in anthropology, I was learning about the history, not even history, the archaeology of what we know of humanity and ancient civilizations. I was learning about the richness of linguistics and how that changes based on our connections and culture and community. I was learning about living cultures and how so many operated from a very different place. And I was also learning about the biology of humans and even how that can change and be shaped by our cultures. And this culture, this community aspect, was suddenly very much mirrored and supported by my minor in psychology at the time. I was learning about the nitty-gritty of connections and self-esteem and self-efficacy and being perceived. Eventually, this led me to public health, where I saw just how strongly our social dynamics and relationships and structures can influence something as foundational as our physical health. Because we cannot separate our physical health from the communities we live in. And so this passion was something that it's always was there, and then slowly through what I was learning, dog has the zoomies, just ignore it. Slowly through what I was learning, I realized that this passion, this fire inside me, was to work in communities, to share the tools I was learning to help them become what they really wanted to be, to help them fulfill the vision that they have for their community and the connections that they have. And it took a lot of years for me to realize what this was. And when I finally, I had a mentor at work who was like, you could be a great consultant. Why don't you start your own business? And I did, based on that recommendation. But it took in that another 2 years or so for me to figure out what exactly Vibrant Systems was going to be, what lens was I going to look through? There were so many different aspects of community building that I wanted to tie in together into this one cohesive whole. And it took a lot of time and shedding and relearning and capacity building to get to the point where I can tell you now, Vibrant Systems is about community. Yes, it's more importantly about connection, true, authentic, and grounded connection. The connections we have to ourselves, to our authentic inner passions and values, the connections we share with others, how we collectively grieve or respond to certain events or stressors, and how do we make choices actively and in an empowered way where we're not just being shaped and coerced by the world around us, but we have a say in what we're building. And the connections to the environment, because at the end of the day, our environments shape who we are. And that's including our natural environments. That's including our built environments. And so yes, Vibrant Systems, if this is your first time seeing any of my content, it is a huge idea, but the work I do is one-on-one. It's face-to-face. It's in videos like these, because the more people I can invite in to see this vision that I have of these connected and cohesive and empowered communities, and the ways that every single one of us can make an impact in those communities, the more I know I am doing my job well. And of course, this is something that does require a lot of self-reflection and a lot of willingness and continued learning and humility, because I make mistakes. I join a community myself and I realize our values are not actually that aligned, and then I have to leave. Or I create something, or I write an article and I go back to it and I'm like, ooh, I don't know what I was thinking, but I wasn't coming from this aligned internal place. And so everything I do with Vibrant Systems is very much something I practice myself. And in Adrienne Marie Brown's Emerging Strategy, I'll leave the link below. I love the book. I keep talking about it because it's so foundational and reflective of what I believe too. But in her book, she spoke about how community mirrors nature in many, many ways. One of them is through fractals, through this idea that what's repeated on the smallest level is what gets repeated as we move up higher and higher scales. And so everything I do with Vibrant Systems, I also do with myself, because it's the same idea as that. So that's the higher level exploration of how I uncovered my passion for community. And like I said in the beginning, every single one of us is going to have a passion. And it's probably going to be different for every single one of us, and it's going to be expressed differently. And some of us are going to relate to our passions in very different ways than others. Some are perfectly happy with that passion just being a hobby they do on weeknights. Others need it to be their full life. And I'm not here to judge or say that there's a right or wrong way to engage with our passions. I think the act of doing so, as long as it's authentic, is so powerful and it is so meaningful. And our diversity in every single capacity is what makes us so strong and resilient together. So I welcome the differences between us. If you are struggling, though, to figure out your passion that you would love to bring to community, I think we need to talk about a few tripping hazards, so to speak, that we might encounter on this path. For a long time, I always had a drive, for example, to start a business. But in my head, especially during, the years of 2020 when small businesses were being celebrated so strongly, I thought that the only small business or business that I could run was, a craft type business. And so I would turn my hobby, crafting, try to create items to sell, and that would burn me out so quickly. And if you're someone who's experiencing something like that with something you consider a passion, that is a sign that it is not meant to be scaled up in that way. Or at least not at this time, not yet. It could be either that is meant to be a hobby that is meant to fill you up rather than something you give away. Turning a hobby into a transaction can very quickly destroy the joy we get from it. It also could be related to your capacity to manage that extra awareness around that hobby, right? If we haven't balanced our material, physical well-being with our emotional well-being, with our mental well-being, with our spiritual well-being, anything can burn us out. Which is why, incidentally, I created my video course, Elements of Self, because that is the pathway I walked through to find the balance that enabled me to create Vibrant Systems and what it is today. I'll leave the link below if you want to check that out. Absolutely no pressure. I think it's a fantastic resource, but I understand it's not for everyone. So be cautious and aware of your capacity. And if you do have a passion and you're committed and you know for sure that this passion is something that you're ready to bring to your community in one way or another, I want to remind you from the depth of my heart that slow, small steps forward are always going to be more impactful in the long term than something perfect or something huge the first time. Let's use an example. Say you're a musician. You love playing guitar, saxophone, or even drums, and you want to host more music nights or jam nights in your community to bring other musicians together. That's a wonderful vision to have. And if there's someone watching this and that is their vision, please do it, because we need music places where people can just go and enjoy themselves and connect. Waiting to see if she was going to bark more. Okay, I think we're good. We need spaces to connect through music. Music is an ancient human practice, and I personally love music, and I love musicians for what they offer the rest of us. I love their creativity. I love the joy and the way they color the world around us. Now, if you're planning to start this huge, wonderful, amazing concert, but you're struggling to find other people who are confident enough to perform in front of a crowd, you might lose steam. You might feel, what's the word I'm looking for? Disencouraged. You might feel like maybe your vision is too big. And if you believe those feelings or the stories that come from those feelings, you might stop rather than pursuing this vision that you've held so clearly and deeply in your heart. And what I would like to offer you, if you're this person, if you're watching this, if you're like, how did she know that? What I would like to offer you is, okay, what's the first small step? Is it creating a local jam session night in a community space? Or if you're comfortable, your own home, only if you're comfortable. But even a community space might be better because it increases visibility. Is it even just learning about who the other musicians are in your community, or perhaps why there aren't more of them? Is it starting a local community page dedicated to live music, local music? Celebrating, local artists or even artists from your country? What would it look like if you broadened the idea of what that first step could be? And this is true for any passion that we might have. You don't have to be a musician. Maybe you're a gardener. Maybe you want to start an amazing community garden. Okay, what's the first step? Have you spoken to your town council to see the logistics around it? Is it possible to connect with your library to start a local seed bank or gardening planning group in February? It's February right now, so that could be something to consider. Does it look like talking about the values of native plants or pollinator-friendly plants? Does it look like talking about the impact of having a garden instead of a lawn or other relevant topics? There are so many different ways that this comes to, and I also want to share in this, our passions can turn into real transformative community action, because back when I used to live in the city of Edmonton, I found a thrift store called Blenders Garment Recycling, I think is the full name. I'll also leave their link below because they are a wonderful, wonderful store. And their mission is to help dramatically reduce the amount of clothing that ends up in landfills, because that is a significant issue. And so they have a thrift store, which is great. They sell clothing by the pound instead of by articles, so it's super cheap, more accessible to anyone. They have classes to teach people how to mend clothing or create clothing that they'd actually wear, or to even create like these wonderful, I haven't actually gone to one of the sessions, but I always wanted to, like a floor poof that they can sit on, and it uses so much fabric and scraps because they stuff it with those fabric scraps instead of stuffing. And they have taken this vision, this mission of reducing clothing waste and turned it into this thriving community space. And I think that's fantastic. There are so many ways, so many pathways to make an impact on the things we care about. We just have to find the right pathway for us, because every single one of us is probably going to do it a different way. And we need all those different ways. And yes, we should connect. Yes, we should collaborate. If you're someone listening to me and you're like, I want to work with you because I love the way you think, or you're already spitting out ideas I hadn't thought of before, then yes, reach out to me. I'll also leave my email down below so you can send me an email and let's chat. Let's talk. I'm probably going to be opening up a community mentor coaching program. I haven't decided on the actual title of that yet, but I'm thinking second half of February, that's something that's going to come online that I'm really excited about. And it will give me the opportunity to connect with more folks like you who want to move forward into community action, but aren't actually sure how to start. And so you'll be able to meet with me, work with me, and build up the capacity in like face-to-face interactions, coaching sessions, and there'll be tools and reflections and all those things too. You'll have access to some of the things I've already created, like my value identification and exploration workbook. If that's something you're interested in, subscribe now so that you actually get the announcement of when that's live. Didn't expect to do that then. Just thinking. I was reflecting earlier this week. I was like, what were my biggest challenges doing this work? Figuring out my personal passion was one of them. And really, the next big challenge was, how do I expand? How do I build the capacity to do the work that I want to do? I have the vision. I know what I care about. How do I actually do it? It was a huge barrier for so many of us. And I kind of already said the secret. The secret is choosing those smaller steps first. I wasn't doing YouTube when I started with Vibrant Systems. I was doing social media. I was focusing on my website because those were things I could hold closer. I didn't have to be on camera in the same way. Around the time that I started posting on Instagram, I also started posting on YouTube. They were fairly close together, but they were shorter. They were different. I wasn't doing webinars like this one where I was speaking directly to people and sharing what I'd learned, because I had to learn these lessons first. And the reality is those small steps outside of our comfort zone are how we build the capacity and are how we expand our comfort zone. So that this, for me, a long time ago, I think there's a video from like August where I had just gotten this camera. I just committed to really doing this YouTube channel. And I was like, whoa, I can see my face way too closely in this camera. I don't know if I like it. That was such an expansion zone for me then. And now this is a comfort zone for me because I've built that capacity. And this is how every single kind of expansion works, right? And we also need to, in this trying of new things, in this expansion of new things, we need to practice taking our ego out of it. And what I mean by this is we're going to make mistakes. We're going to mess up. We're going to look foolish at times. And I have looked foolish on this YouTube channel before. I have said things that if I went back, I probably would regret how I said them. Or, regret the outfit I wore or whatever. But when we can set aside our ego, when we can move from a place of understanding that how we mess up, when we misspeak, when we stumble, is also an opportunity for growth and expansion, it changes how we engage with those mistakes. Because we're no longer attaching it from that ego point of, ooh, I didn't do it perfectly, I'm not worthy, I should abandon this vision. And we're showing up as a student. We're showing up as someone who can be humble and you can be like, okay, yes, I misspoke in that video, or I said things that weren't true to me because I wasn't stopping to pause and breathe when I was speaking. So I know next time I really need to focus on grounding and breathing and pausing and letting myself reflect, because I know my message is more powerful when I do that. That's very much so a realization I made doing this YouTube channel. And honestly, when I started doing live webinars to post on this YouTube channel, the first couple were very nerve-wracking for me because I had actual people I was meeting with. And what I actually learned from that was that I could not go into a live webinar with a script or this specific outline of all the points I had to hit, because that stopped me from actually flowing and aligning to the message that I knew I had to share. It also stopped me from being able to be responsive to my audience, to the questions they had, to the priorities they had. It was this huge block. And what I ended up doing after that was I actually went and re-recorded the whole first webinar from this place that I'm speaking now. Luckily, no one attended that webinar, so it's not like someone saw something and then I posted something totally different. But the very concept, the idea of potentially having to speak to a person made me scared. And so I wrote this outline to try and control the situation, and that made it worse than if I'd just shown up authentically and spoke the way I'm speaking now. That was learning. And I really learned from that learning that I had to set my ego aside for this channel for it to be what I know it can be. And this is true for all aspects of community building, because in community, when we're connecting with other people especially, there are always going to be things and people and relationships and conversations outside our control. And if we're constantly trying to control how we're perceived from that place of ego, we are missing out on the richness of these experiences and what they hold for us. Because when we're trying to control things, we're trying to keep the unexpected at bay, But it's in the unexpected that the most powerful connections, stories, lessons come through. That is how we make our impact, is responding and living in right relationship with uncertainty and chaos and the unexpected. And when we build our capacity to sit with the unexpected, to manage it, to expect it and welcome it, we are living a very, very different life. And in my experience, it's been a life that's a lot more rich and vibrant and exciting to be a part of. One of the ways we can help ourselves build this capacity to be in right relationship with uncertainty is by understanding what our values actually are. And I mean this very specifically in the sense that when we know what our values are, we can make choices that align to those values. And for example, I was organizing a demonstration in my local community a couple of weekends ago now. And it was around an issue that is politically charged, and there are high emotions around it because there always are. I'll be blunt. I don't actually have anything to hide with that. I was organizing a demonstration against, in opposition to, the Alberta separatist movement. So I was on the side of Canada, which I have a whole video about my reflections on that. You can go check it out if you want. I'll post it somewhere. But in that, there was going to be a lot of uncertainty because I was going to be out there on the same day as the people signing the petition. A lot of the folks that I have met who are separatists are very quick to react. And there was a sense of nervousness in me of, okay, what if somebody did try to come and confront me about how I'm standing up for what I believe in? It didn't happen, but the thought was there. The nervousness was there. And how my values have helped me is that I really value curiosity. I really value connection and playfulness. I value research. I value diversity. And if in a hypothetical situation someone had confronted me angrily, my values could inform how I would react in that situation in an authentic way, not pre-scripted. I could have diffused the situation by being playful or goofy. I could have been curious about why they're feeling the way they're feeling about Canada as a whole. I could incorporate my own understanding of the research around what is feasible for our province, for Canada, and what is realistic, what is not. I could be strategic, and all these different ways that my values could have shown up so that I could be my authentic self in that moment, even though it could have been emotionally charged. Again, that didn't happen. It was a lovely day. We got a lot of support. It was actually a lot of fun. I also learned that I am not a front lines person, at least not for issues that, again, there's a whole other video on that. You're just going to have to go check it out. It's not the point of this one. It was a learning process, though, and it was an expansion of my comfort zone, and I'm very glad that I did it. Sorry, I'm just... Sometimes you gotta wiggle to let the thoughts come through, right? If you would like help with your own values exploration, my values identification and exploration workbook is the exact pathway I walked through my own values journey. I really love it. It might be one of my favorite things I've created so far for Vibrant Systems. The link will be below. The link to the shop will be below, so it's on there as well. If you do want to join my community mentor coach program, title is being workshopped. The Value Identification and Exploration Workbook, View, will be one of the resources you receive with that package. So it's definitely worth even, again, subscribing so you get that announcement so you can decide if you want to just do the workbook to start or if you want to work one-on-one with me. I am really excited for that. I'm so excited to meet more like-minded community builders like me through this. And if I can help you make your vision a reality too, that is all the better. I would love, love, love to be a part of that. Okay, so we talked about how to define your personal vision. We talked about the small steps we need to practice to build our comfort zone, and we talked about how values help us navigate the uncertainty of this expansion into action. Values also, I want to say this, they help us understand that not everybody who shares the same passion as us shares it in a way that's aligned. And this means, I'm passionate about community. I'm passionate about community building. But my values are very much in research. I shared my background from anthropology and psychology to public health. I know how much is political, and I can't turn off the part of myself that sees the political impact of programs and funding and services. I can't do that. I can't pretend that racism doesn't exist. I can't pretend that the history of colonization in Canada isn't still creating so much harm and that it's something that needs to be addressed. For me, that is intrinsically part of how I view community building. I had a friend who also cared a lot about community building, but unfortunately she was from a background where she didn't see and she did not have a wish to see these political elements to community building. And she is doing her own very, very creative and amazing work, and I do wish her all the best, and I do wish that she can expand her perspective to be aware of these elements. Sorry, my phone is going off. I'm gonna let it ring. It's fine. You might not even be able to hear it. I do hope that she can expand her perspective through this to be understanding of the limitations so many people experience and of intergenerational trauma. But when I last spoke to her, this was just not the case. And I realized that I could not continue building communities with her without compromising my own values. And it was a hard decision to make, but it is one that I am glad I made. Even though there have been times where I was asking myself, was I being too harsh? Was I making the right decision? Our values help us create clarity when it comes to choices like that, because they are hard choices. And so this is just another reason why I think values work. If you're someone who's called to community, it cannot be understated, because our values inform our actions, and our actions are always driven by values. So if you have a value and you aren't actually making choices that embody that value, it's a value on paper, it's not true. And we see this in communities. They'll have their list of values on their website, but they're planning or creating visions or budgets that do not reflect those values. This is also a way we can learn what communities actually reflect our values. You can go on a Facebook community group, for example. You'll have their little values things, and then you can go look at the comments and see if that's reflected. And I think this is an important practice, because especially for communities that are already established, it can be very hard to change the culture from within. And I'm not going to say it's the right choice every time, because I think we do need people who are really passionate about changing those internal cultures, and it's going to take work. But I do think there is equally important work to be done by showing alternatives to how those communities operate, because it makes this values alignment more and more feasible when we see it being done by companies or communities or clubs or organizations. It doesn't become an excuse anymore when we show them it's possible. And it's possible to succeed with that. Like there's that one billionaire guy, I don't know his name, who, cut his salary to $70,000 a year so he could raise up the salaries of all his workers in his company. And then they ended up performing even better with this, more equal distribution of wealth. Doing things like that, showing people that this new alternative way works, is how we change the world around us. And so every time you're called to do something in a different way, it is a calling you should listen to, you should follow, because there's going to be so many people telling you not to do it, that it's risky, that it's uncertain, that it's never been done. It hasn't been done because you haven't done it. And like I said, it's not going to happen right away the way you expect it. There are small baby steps that are a part of that. There are ways we have to expand and grow that are a part of that. But you can do it if you give yourself the time to grow into the person who has done it. Thank you so much for joining me in this video. I would love to hear your thoughts on this webinar. Would you like to see more like this? Is there another topic you'd love me to speak about? I've been working in community systems for 10 years now, so I do have a fair bit of experience to pull from, as well as a lot of personal reflections and experience. I would love to hear your thoughts below. My name's Danielle. If you want to see more Vibrant Systems content, subscribe. You can also join my newsletter if you head over to my website. My mission is to help people deepen their connections to self, to others, and to the environment. Like this video if you agree with that kind of mission. Let's make your story a vibrant one.